You want to introduce yourself first? Take your mask off.
My name is David Spencer, and this is my sidekick, Morris.
Let's introduce our guest.
And I'd like to introduce, and I'm honored to introduce Boutwell's administrator, Wendy Kingbay.
Yay! Let's see what I look like.
And Wendy, I'd like to begin by asking you to recall some of your memories growing up in Hippie, Minnesota.
Wonderful. Yep, so I am an Iron Ranger. I absolutely loved my childhood. My mom and dad are still there, still together, and my only sibling still lives up there as well. But I had a great childhood. I would do it all over again. We got in trouble often, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And when you are friends with the chief of police's daughter, and one of your friends is the commissioner's grandpa, you always have a way of getting out of trouble. So, small town helps, but very much loved it. We were outdoors all the time, and I was raised well by my mom and dad.
Why is the Hippie High School called Castle on the Hill?
Well, I do know that it's a historical landmark, and if anyone wants to see a picture of it, my mother, after years of saying, I do not want a picture of Hibbing High School, sent it anyways. So it sits in my office against my will, but that is our relationship. People do enjoy it, but the miners gave the money that was needed in order to build it. So it is very pretty, and I guess I took that for granted as a child, and many people I've brought back to Hibbing, and that's what they want me to do, is break them into Hibbing High School and show them our auditorium and the beautiful work that's inside.
And if I went to the auditorium and I asked to hear a orchestra piece, would that be possible?
Yes, it would.
Why?
It is kind of designed in that format. So there is a balcony. It was just recently remodeled, and so very beautiful plush seats, stage up high, everything that you would need in that sort of relevant piece for music.
So I could hear any orchestra piece except the violin.
You tell me.
That's what it'll play any instrument except the violin.
Okay, fun fact.
And you graduated in what year?
I graduated in 1991.
What motivated you to go to the University of North Dakota?
So I went to Hibbing Community College, and it was not a very proud parent moment for my parents. I had a lot of fun, didn't really work hard at doing good in school. And my mother made one comment to me. She said, "You'll never graduate college." And I lived to defy her. So the very next Monday, I drove up to University of North Dakota on my own. I signed up for classes, and I attended in the fall and graduated 4 years later.
And what was the particular interest in gerontology?
So my very first degree is I wanted to be a speech language pathologist. It was very hard to get into, so I actually fell into, the degree was called Rec and Leisure Studies with an emphasis in therapeutic recreation. So that is a certified therapeutic rec specialist. So that's the degree that I got out of the University of North Dakota. And I took that degree and I worked in a hospital with traumatic brain injury, or their rehab unit, but most of them were TBIs. I enjoyed it very, very much, and I thought I would never leave.
Is a gerontologist a medical doctor?
Yes, but the degree you're referring to is gerontology was one of my master's degrees. I got that later on in life, and that's the study of aging.
From the University of Minnesota.
Correct.
And when did you become interested, though, in gerontology? What motivated you, in other words, to pursue this particular field?
I didn't realize how much interest I had, but looking back in my lifetime, even in high school, I would force the student council to go to the local nursing homes. And when we did get in there to call bingo or provide entertainment for them, I was very hard on the staff because I didn't like that the residents didn't have matching clothes or their hairs didn't seem to be done. So I asked if I could match their clothes and do their hair. So very early on, I guess I had a love for seniors. I very much loved every single one of my grandparents. They all passed at different times in my life, but every single one of them I remember, and they had a huge impact on my life. I just thought they were the most wonderful things and put on a pedestal, and they all treated me very like most grandparents do, with love.
Can you give an example of your application, of your understanding and your background and education of gerontology to the residents here at Boutwell's?
So I went back to school during a difficult time in my life, and I very much enjoyed school, so I did go study gerontology and then alternative therapies as well. And that just allowed me to understand, the aging body and the process, and different modalities to use with the aging that aren't Western medicine, like aromatherapy, acupuncture, things of that nature. And because I did love what I was doing at the time, I just thought anything to enhance my performance at work would have been wonderful. And so that's why I went back and pursued those two, and they've helped me out. I don't know that they get you far in life, but they certainly have not hurt the career path I chose.
And is there an example from your experience here at Boutwell's Landing where it fulfilled your own expectations for gerontology?
Absolutely. So oftentimes we see people who are agitated or having different behaviors. This would mostly be in the care center setting. And oftentimes we do use aromatherapy or different essential oils in order to alleviate some of these anxieties that residents do receive. So lavender is a big one we use here, and then sometimes for depression too, we use citrus, things of that nature. But everyone's pretty rehearsed in the Gables to use what they need on the individual person, and it's very nice to see that over some sort of medication.
I asked a number of people, and your visits to that area have been regular, and they like it. They enjoy seeing. They don't get shaken with fear by seeing you walk in the door or anything. So that's a good compliment. Now, you also worked with teenagers.
I worked with kids with disabilities who had severe autism, absolutely. Very much loved that population as well. It was very rewarding, and that was for a friend of mine from college, and it was short-lived, but very much find myself gravitated towards anyone who has autism as well.
Do you find a comparison between your interaction with that group and, say, residents here at Boutwell's?
I don't know that that's necessarily a connection for me. I think that I have recognized in a very young age that people who are older are wiser, and I can tell you that I have learned more by the residents that I have surrounded myself with than any college degree I have or any other learnings I've gone to school for.
How have your past positions prepared you for interaction with the residents here at Boutwell's?
Well, I don't know that there's a specific moment that comes to mind, but when you find yourself in a leadership role, and really I think a lot of people just seek to be understood, and compassion is usually what we need to give each other as human beings. It's kind of just a natural fit. So even though I'm paid for a position here, I always say this is my hobby. You'll find me here when I don't need to be. And I enjoy being here, and I can't believe I'm actually getting paid to do this. So.
And how has been gerontology been a good fit for you?
I I think the goal for everyone is to find what you love, and if you can get paid doing it, then you've won in this lifetime.
Do you have any formal way to get feedback on your interactions that would measure and tell you, yeah, this is what I wanted to do and I'm rewarded for it?
I don't know that there's formal feedback on my performance, but there's no aptitude test that I have taken in my lifetime that said this would have been where I should be.
You've been tested with this pandemic here. And the feedback that I have gotten from asking folks, they think you've done a superior job. What's your thought about how to respond specifically to this pandemic?
The one thing I think that Botwell's has done well is that we don't necessarily believe in titles. We all take what's called a Strength Finders test, and so we know how each one is wired, and we use each other's strengths. So all titles went off the table. We did whatever we had to do in order to get the job done. And there are some tasks that people enjoy doing, and there's some tasks that people don't enjoy doing. So the idea of finding the strengths and using people outside of the scope they were hired for really did us well during this pandemic.
I forgot, I wanted to mention that Morris asked me to ask you if you remember who was the mascot in your town and school.
Well, we were the Blue Jackets.
Did you have a mascot?
Did we have a mascot? Boy, you're making me think about that. Not that I'm aware of. We were just an anchor and kind of a Popeye the Sailor, but there was no suit that anyone wore.
What if I said gopher? Does that ring a bell?
Well, I was a gopher at the University of Minnesota.
Well, no, I'm talking specifically about Hibbing. Either Hibbing High School or maybe the town had a mascot.
I'm not shocked you know more than me.
Well, the mascot was the gopher, and then it became a greyhound. Why would you imagine that they would move it from gopher to greyhound? Your background in history will come out now.
Jeez. I have no idea. You have stumped me. Do you know, Patty?
No, I'm sorry, I wasn't cueing you, sorry.
Okay.
No.
Teach me a lesson.
The transfer occurred just recently when it was the mascot was transferred from gopher to greyhound. Now you know the understanding or the connection, right?
No.
Well, the Greyhound bus line was started in Hippie.
Okay.
Remember that?
I do remember the Greyhound bus line.
And that was the one way to recognize and identify with the Greyhound in the past. Another question about your position here at Boutwell's. You came when exactly? How long ago?
I came technically in August of 2014, but I was on site full-time September of 2014.
And all the time you've been here, what do you love about your work?
You.
Flattery will get you everything you want. You've heard me say that before.
I am capable of doing many different roles and responsibilities or having other jobs, but I will never leave because the residents, I like when they give me grief. They bring me way more joy, and it is just an honor to assist and serve.
How many are there?
There is 627 of you today.
And how many residents?
That was residents.
I'm talking about staff now.
Sorry, there is 405 staff as of today.
And turnover of staff?
Well, turnover of staff is done differently, but I think what you do mean is nursing staff and specifically nursing assistants, and that is around 50% for PHS and Boutwell's.
To come back to the pandemic, is there a particular way that you have gotten aid or assistance from either staff or residents on how to deal with this crisis?
I think that we are very unique here in the fact that it was overwhelming how many residents raised their hand, called, stopped by, did whatever they needed to see what we needed. They thanked us. They were beyond gracious. They understood the steps we took. They prayed for us. And they did small acts of kindness from the beginning to today. And I can tell you that is what I'm going to remember about a pandemic in a year from now or 5 years from now, is the kindness shown.
In preparation for our discussion and our chat with Morris, I asked a number of people about your leadership, particularly with the pandemic. And the thing, Wendy, that stood out was your transparency. In other words, you weren't hiding anything, and you told what was going on, and this is my position, and so forth. Let me shift gears and ask you about your family. Can you give us some background on, you live in Woodbury, you're married. Tell us about your family and hobbies. And I know that you particularly have heralded your hockey player son. Tell us about that.
So,
All your family.
my husband is Corey. We've been married for 15 years, and we have an only child. His name is Carson, and he's 14 years. So Corey and I dated several years before getting married, and I truly did not want children. He talked me into this, and I guess he can't give them back, so I've been keeping them for 14 years now and counting. He has brought us great joy. So far, he's a good kid. I know my time is coming, but he loves hockey. He plays baseball, and he will golf with his dad and friends as leisure. So very much into sports. He enjoys school as much as a 14-year-old can. And we actually feel very blessed because we know how people have struggled through the pandemic and with children. And right now, Carson is just a great kid. And we feel like that has been luck because our genes are not as good.
Now, you were talking earlier about your parents' reaction to your behavior, so to speak, when you were in high school.
Yes.
Did you learn anything from that then and apply that to Carson?
I'm very open. I don't think parenting is a natural skill set I have. I'm very open with my child. He doesn't necessarily, I've never told him my stories. Now my mother has. But he's now old enough and wise enough to realize I was a goofball. I never caused harm to anyone, but I had a whole lot of fun. And that's just what everyone did my age on the iron range. So it wasn't like I stood out. But again, I would do my childhood years over in a heartbeat.
Did you play hockey?
Nope, I was a gymnast. So I very much enjoyed that that was my steady sport. And then when I heard that the Minnesota Vikings asked the Hippie High School band to go to Sweden, I tried out for flags the summer of my 10th grade year and made it. So I got to travel with the Minnesota Vikings, and I was their halftime show, and I twirled a flag. So skill level was very low there.
How about hobbies today?
I wish I could say I had a hobby that I loved, but again, I'm going to say my hobby is work, which is probably not the right answer. But I do absolutely enjoy being outside, walking around, and just being with others. So it's very easy to come, when Carson goes to hockey, I sneak in and see who I can harass and talk to. When Carson goes to baseball practice, I do the same thing. So it's always nice to surround yourself with people who are better than you are, and that's exactly what I get to do here.
Now, you said you went with the Vikings, you went to Sweden?
Correct.
With your background and all the experiences you've had, and the opportunity you've had to influence the lives of others, aging folks. What is your philosophy?
My philosophy is listen. I think that you guys are very wise and we have a lot to learn. And your stories, and you're genuinely kind and want what's best for the people around you. So when it comes to you guys, I'd rather not talk and just sit back and listen.
Now, I asked you earlier about the social media. Given some of the information I provided to you about that one incident that this woman had with her daughter, do you see the social media posing a problem for future studies in gerontology?
I don't. I'm sure that there's going to be issues, but social media is not, it's helpful to us, and sometimes it can be hurtful, but it's just part of our society, and it is what it's not going to go away. It's only going to influence us more, correct? And so we just have to embrace it and figure out how to best serve.
Well, again, we are honored to have you as our guest. And I know the residents here from the surveys I've made, informal, in terms of leadership during this crisis time, they think you're doing a wonderful job, and I agree. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Well, that wasn't